Yes, it's true, I am selling my Canon RP. This camera right here has been honestly game-changing for my YouTube channel. Not only have I learned a ton about filming on mirrorless camera, shooting manual mode, and a ton of other things, this honestly is what got me into creating content. What's up everyone, Matt here, and before I reveal what I purchased, hint hint, we are actually filming on it right now, I want to talk about some of the things I liked and disliked about the Canon RP. I want to show you some of the footage I shot on it and why I think it might be a good option for you, especially if you're just getting into filmmaking. Side note here, this video is going to be about using the Canon RP for video. I'm not a photographer, I don't take photos, and by no means am I a professional in this field. This is just my opinion and the things I've experienced in the past year using this camera. Let's jump into it. First thing we're talking about here is the autofocus. The Canon RP has dual pixel autofocus in 1080p with face tracking and eye detection. And honestly, it's incredible. Now this feature isn't anything new. It's been around for a long time, but I just wanted to comment on how great it is. You can get up, walk away, push into the camera, pull out, and it retracts every time and puts you in focus. My next favorite thing about the Canon RP is full frame at 1080p. You are getting an incredibly wide and dynamic picture for a great price, especially for an entry-level camera. This is great, especially if you're using a 35mm prime, because you can get great depth of field without a crop. Now let's check out the stabilization. The Canon RP does not have in-body image stabilization, but it does have a digital option for stabilizing. Here's a shot with no stabilization at all. Now here's that same shot with digital stabilization enabled. You'll notice there is a slight crop on the picture. It actually seems to work quite well, and I was walking pretty hard and making a lot of movement. Here's the last option with digital enhanced stabilization enabled. You can see there's a drastic crop. I had to hold the camera out quite a bit farther, but it makes a huge difference on how smooth the picture is when walking. Here is all three of those videos together so you can see what they look like. You can really notice how much it crops when you have all three videos together. Let's talk about the form and functionality. Overall, the camera fits in your hand extremely well. All the buttons are extremely easy to access from one hand, and it's super lightweight, especially if you pair it with a 16 or 35mm lens. It makes the perfect vlogging camera. To top it all off, it has a flip out screen which rotates, so if you are vlogging, you can flip it towards you, or you can flip it back with ease. The touchscreen is probably one of my favorite features. It's super responsive and really easy to use. Given that it does have a touchscreen, diving through menus is really easy. You can use the directional pad or just touch on the screen, and everything's easily accessible. Last thing here, the battery compartment and SD card slot are on the bottom. Super easy to pull out, change batteries, take your card out. Moving on, the RF lens is the next thing I really love about it. It has the control ring, and you can also use adapters to use old EF lens. Changing the lens is super simple. Push the button on the side, pull the old lens off, line up the red marks, put the new one on, and you're set to go. Okay, before we talk about all the things I don't like, let's cue the B-roll. And that should give you an idea of some of the cool things you can do with this camera. Now let's talk about the things I don't like. So one of the things I probably dislike the most is the 1.76 crop in 4K. Here's a shot of a 35mm lens in 1080 on the left and 4K on the right. I was sitting in the exact same spot and the camera didn't move. So then I thought, okay, 4K crop, no problem. I'll get a 16mm lens to compensate for the crop factor. Well, I thought this looked great, then we ran into another problem, which brings me to my next point. No dual pixel autofocus in 4K. You can see here it's trying so hard to focus the entire time, and once it does focus, if I make a slight movement, it takes quite a while to get me back in focus. Now, if you're shooting 1080p, this isn't a problem, but I really wanted to step up to 4K, and this is where I was having the biggest issue. You could also always put it on manual focus, get your object in frame, and then leave it there. Now, this one wasn't really a deal breaker for me, but there's no 60 frames per second in 4K. This is shot in 1080p, and it still looks pretty great. Also, shout out to Finn for wanting to play fetch. And the final thing is it uses these tiny LPE17 batteries, and they just burn through so quickly. I ended up buying 3 of them, and I was constantly switching them during one simple shoot. Okay, behold the Canon R6. I am super stoked on this thing. I feel like it has a lot of the features I felt were missing in the Canon RP, as far as 4K, dual pixel autofocus, face tracking, and things that I'm really going to utilize for my filmmaking. Now, it also happens to come with an additional $1,500 price tag, so there is that. We're currently shooting on the Canon RP in 1080 with face tracking. How's it look? We're upscaled to 4K. You tell me. I want to know. We'll do another deep dive video on the Canon R6 and how I'm going to utilize it. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below and stay tuned for the next video coming out soon.